Hi everyone, my name's Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and I thought I would start a new reading vlog today. It is still hot and humid outside, so I'm going to keep this intro short. Tomorrow it is supposed to drop about 6 degrees, which I am very much looking forward to, but I wanted to film this intro so I can start reading tonight and crack on with these books. I've been thinking about what kind of reading vlog I want to do, because one hopes that autumn is going to arrive later this week, maybe, and I don't want to go into scary, like Halloween-y type books yet, because I want to save that for October probably, but I would like to maybe get into some creepier things. So the books that I've pulled off my shelves, I've got 5 here, they have some kind of sinister undertones. And the 5 books that I have picked off my shelves are, some of them are a bit dystopian, some of them, as I said, are a little bit unsettling, and they're all a bit different. This one I've had on my shelf for ages, and every winter I bring it out thinking, this is the time I should read it, and I haven't. So I know it's not cold right now, and I would maybe like to read it when it's cold, but I'm hoping it will make me feel cold. This is Ice by Anna Kavan. It is a post-nuclear dystopia, and it's about a man who's following this woman who's running away from him in a world just covered in ice and snow. Sealed by Naomi I think is the opposite, because I think this one is set in Australia and I think it's very hot. It is not a dystopian, but kind of on the brink of perhaps apocalypse, because it's about a pandemic and it's about a couple who are expecting a baby who have moved away from the city to the countryside to try and get away from this plague. But it's not an illness like one we would know. I think it has quite a bit of body horror in it, so looking forward to that. Then we, can I say I'm looking forward to that. So this is Sheep's Clothing by Celia. This is a reissued classic. I think this one came out in the 80s. I read her book, what's it on my shelf? A Helping Hand, which is a reissued classic from the 60s when Dawn Books published it last year. It reminded me of Muriel Spark, Patricia Highsmith. This is about 2 women who've recently been released from prison, and they decide they're going to set up a business together. And by business, I mean they're going to con people. They're going to con people out of money, and we are following them. Hopefully that's going to be great. I mentioned this in a recent book haul. This is Astral Season, Beastly Season by Tahi, Saihate, which is translated from the Japanese by Kalu Almoni, and this is about 2 teenage boys who fall head over heels in love with a female J-pop star. She murders her boyfriend, and they decide, because they love her so much, they're going to tell the police that they did it so she doesn't have to go to prison. They'll take the fall for her. It sounds like a really intriguing premise. And then this one has been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. This is The Harpy by Megan Hunter. She's the author of The End We Start From, which is, well, has been made into a film with Jodie Comer, which I think is coming out soon. This is about a woman who opens the door one day to find a man standing on her doorstep who tells her that his wife has been having an affair with her husband, and she has to decide what she's going to do with this information. And I think she decides she's going to punish her husband. So I wonder if it's going to be a bit like My Husband by Maud Ventura, though obviously that came out afterwards, but I wonder if there were parallels between those 2 texts. So those are the 5 books that I would like to get to over the course of the next week or so. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that in these vlogs I like to take you on some walks as well. If it cools down, I'm sure it will. It's going to. I'm just going to keep saying it's going to, in the hope that that just helps move things along. Maybe some rainy walks, which I would be personally thrilled about. We're also going to do some cooking. I haven't cooked that much recently because I haven't wanted to have the oven on, but I did make some meringues over the weekend. They turned out very nice. I was very pleased with those. But tomorrow, if it's cool enough, I would like to make some bagels. So let's cut to that now. I will join you tomorrow for that. This video is also very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers, but we'll talk about that further on into the video, and I will see you for bagel making tomorrow. it. But as you may be able to tell by the lighting, it is overcast today. I'm wearing long dungarees and a long sleeve top, which is frankly unheard of. It was very hot yesterday, and I went to the Heath and met Sana for a walk. Lovely Sana. Weird because the Heath is kind of starting to look autumnal, but it was still very hot, so the leaves were turning. It felt like, I don't know, an out of time sort of day, but it was really lovely to see her. And on the way back, I saw a fox in the allotment, which you will have seen in the clip, and she was just going around the allotment weeing on all of the pumpkins, which was a choice. So, you know, if anyone is growing pumpkins for Halloween or just buying pumpkins for Halloween, do make sure you wash them first. Yeah, I'm going to start reading Sealed by Naomi Booth today after I finish work. But I just wanted to hop on here a second and show you a very exciting book that arrived in the post today. I may have squealed. This is the title. It is Has Anyone Seen Charlotte Salter? Are you ready for the spine? It's by Nikki French. So this is the new Nikki French book. It's coming out in February. So this is a proof that I have been sent. And it says, loved by all who meet her, but someone wants her gone. So we've got a split time narrative. It's set in 1990 when there is a family birthday party and the mother of the family doesn't turn up, goes missing. I think no one knows what happened to her. And then we've got the modern day setting when a true crime podcast is started. I love this trend in crime books at the moment. When a true crime podcast is started about Charlotte's disappearance, it seems like the town's buried secrets and the Salters might finally come to light. So yeah, it's a big one too. I think this is their biggest one since, I want to say, The Lying Room, but I may have just made that up. I guess it depends on the size of the font and everything as well. But a big book from Nikki French. It's all I ever wanted in life. So that is going on the TBR to be read at some point over the autumn periods. And I'll mention it when I read it, but I'll talk about it probably once it's out in February, because it seems a bit ridiculous to be talking about a book in detail that you can't buy yet. That just seems mean. So yes, excited to get to that. But I'm going to continue with work now, and I will check in with you this evening when I start reading Sealed. We went for our evening walk and Mr. M's currently making dinner. It started raining, which has thrilled me. And I just did something that did not thrill me. I accidentally dropped a jar of garlic paste in the kitchen and I tried to catch it, but the lid came off and it went poof, and it went all over the clothes horse. Thankfully, there were no clothes on it. I just put it up because I've put a load of laundry on and I'm about to hang clothes up. But it's just the most annoying thing that garlic paste could have smeared itself all over, because the clothes horse is just loads of metal rods with lots of corners and it's just clinging to all the surfaces. I've done my best to clean it. I don't want my clothes to smell of garlic as much as I love garlic. That wouldn't be great. So that's what I've done so far this evening. I've got a bit of work to still do later. We wanted to go for a walk before the sun set, but now the sun is starting to set. As I said, Mr. M is making dinner, so I'm going to sit down and continue reading Sealed by Naomi Booth. I've already read the first few pages. It is about a woman called Alice and her partner Peter, and they've moved from the city out into the countryside in Australia because there is a pandemic going on, but it seems that a lot of people are reluctant to talk about it, and Pete is one of those people. He thinks Alice is being a hypochondriac. He thinks that she is imagining things because she's a hysterical woman. Pete is an asshole. He is an asshole. I do not like him in this book. He is gaslighting Alice, saying that things that she's seeing happening in the world and that she's actually researched as part of her job are not real, and that this pandemic is not happening. So this pandemic, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, is one where people's skin seals up over themselves. So your eyes will disappear and then your ears will close up, your mouth will close up and you can't breathe. It's a very claustrophobic thing to be reading about. And Alice is currently pregnant. She's in her 3rd trimester. They've just moved to the countryside, and she has gone to the doctors to try and set herself up there so that she can get some medical help, given that she's got a baby on the way soon. But when she gets there, the GPs is in absolute chaos with people who are sick. It is very difficult reading. The way that she's written is very cloying, feels very panicky. One thing that I appreciate that this book is doing is that Naomi Booth is showing how in this world, with the rise of this skin-related pandemic, racism is becoming more rampant, and racist people are feeling more confident in being vocal because everyone's looking at everyone's skin and judging it all the time. And that definitely reflects what, I can't remember when this was published actually. So this was published in 2017. So this novel is pre-pandemic, but also it reflects what we saw in our most recent pandemic, with an increase in racial hate crimes, but also hate crimes towards the disabled community. There was a 65% increase in disability hate crime in the last few years in the UK. I think actually in England, I think specifically was the survey, and it has been not a fun thing to see. So I like how Naomi Booth is exploring that in this book, specifically looking at immigration and government response to immigration, not just because of this pandemic that is happening, but things that were building up in the country before that anyway, and everything seems to be escalating and coming to a head. So it's very fraught. It's stressing me out. So I'm going to cozy up with a blanket and read it. Yes, and as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video is sponsored very kindly by Serious Readers. I've been working with them for a couple of years. I really don't work with many companies on this channel, so please know that whenever I do, it's because I absolutely adore them, and their support, along with yours over on Patreon, allows me to keep creating free content for you all on here. So I just wanted to shout them out for a minute. The light behind me, this is one of their lights. Serious Readers create amazing reading lights. I'll do a cutaway so you can see it in action. This one that I have is one of their high definition lights. You can get them cordless or wired. Mine is wired, but still very easy to move around. They have this technology that mimics daylight, which is wonderful, especially at the moment with autumn, yay, creeping in, but also meaning it's getting darker earlier. It's become an essential part of my evening reading routine. Their high definition light is hands down the best reading light that I have ever used. And I have a code if you would like to check them out. The code is SR402, and that gets you £100 off a high definition light and free delivery as well. They are well worth checking out. They are a small company. They make all of their lights in the UK and they ship internationally. So I will leave a link in the description box down below. I love them, and they've always been a pleasure to work with as well, which I think is always worth saying, because I like it when I hear that companies are just nice all round and don't just make brilliant products, but are, you know, nice folk to work with. Yeah, they're great. I will leave the code in the link in the description box down below. Go and check them out, and thank you very much to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. I am gonna disappear into this very stressful book, and I will report back once I've finished it. Hi, it's a couple of days later. We really are plummeting ourselves into the evening autumnal lighting. And actually, tea-wise, I have skipped autumn entirely and I'm drinking winter tea. And it smells of, I mean, it's cinnamon, but did anyone used to have those sweets, fireballs, when you were a kid? They were orange, well, orangey red, and they were super spicy, but they would be sweet and cinnamony to start off with, and then you would get to the center and they'd be really hot and spicy, and you would have to try and con people into eating them, which I don't know why I used to think it would work several times over. I feel like once you have persuaded someone to eat one and they realize that it's really spicy, they're not going to do it again, but I used to find them delicious. Anyway, that's what the tea smells like, so it's giving me nostalgia. And as I said, it's been a few days since I checked in with you, and I have finished reading Sealed by Naomi Booth, but I've also DNF'd another one of the books from the TBR pile for this video. Sealed is one of those dystopian books that is very slow, and I think the slowness of it heightens that sense of unease because you want to know what's going to happen. You want to know how things are going to develop. You want to see the really big world picture, but you're stuck in this insular place with these characters who don't know much more than you do. So when I last talked to you, I said that Alice and Pete had moved to the countryside and that there was a pandemic going on, but that they didn't really know much more than that. Alice has her suspicions every time she voices them. Pete shuts them down. Not much changes throughout the rest of this book, apart from, as I said, you feeling the weight of the world around them the further on you get. They go and visit some of their neighbours, but their neighbours are not very accommodating. They have no phone signal. They don't have a landline. And you just think this is not a good place for you to be when you are 36 weeks pregnant. I don't want to tell anyone what to do or not to do, but personally, I would maybe not read this if you're pregnant, especially if you're in your last trimester, because it is just so intense, which is a compliment to the writing. It wouldn't be stressful if it didn't feel realistic. But my God, I just wanted her to leave this place and I wanted her to be near people who could help her. And yes, I also wanted her to leave Pete, very much so. Again, a compliment to the writing, the amount of rage I felt towards her partner, only because it was written so well. Here's a quote. Maybe Pete's right, and all this anxiety is just the hormones. Maybe I see danger everywhere because of an instinct to protect. Pete makes it sound as though it's a positive thing, as though all of my apocalyptic imaginings are a healthy maternal response that's just got a little bit out of hand. He's always ready to see the best in a situation, and in me. No, he's not. I look out at the mountains and the blue-grey haze around them. It's not like the smog back in the city. There's nothing yellow or septic looking about it. The softening of the mountain edges is just distance, and eucalypt oil on the air and low, fine cloud. I breathe out. The nausea has passed. If you are looking for a dystopian book where lots happens and everything gets wrapped up, then this is not the book for you. If you are looking for a book with a similar feeling to something like Tmush by Sven Holm, or I guess The Chrysalis by John Wyndham, though that has more action in it than this one, then this is one for you. I would say sometimes I felt like the pacing was a little bit off. It definitely ramps up very much towards the end, and that maybe felt a little bit late for me, but it definitely also at the same time kept the tension, and I needed to find out what was happening, so I had that momentum with it. So it's not my favourite dystopian, but I think there's lots to admire about it, and I do think about it a lot. And as I said, it very much stressed me out. So that's that one. And then I decided to head to Sheep's Clothing by Celia Dale. And this is the one that I've decided to DNF. And I'm quite sad about it because I really loved her book, A Helping Hand, which I read last year. In many ways, these feel quite similar, and I just think that that's a much more accomplished book because both of these stories are about people trying to con other people out of money. So in Sheep's Clothing, we meet two women who met in prison, and they decided that once they were released, they were going to set up a business together where they go to people's houses pretending to be from the government, saying there's a new scheme in place and these people are due back payments. And while they're in the house, one of them will say, I just need to nip to the bathroom. And instead of going to the bathroom, they'll rummage through their stuff and steal whatever they can. And I enjoyed the beginning of this. It reminded me of Sixth Commandment, which is a drama that Mr. M and I have watched recently, which is based on a real life crime that happened a few years ago. It's brilliantly acted. It's got Timothy Spall in it. And I would definitely recommend that show. But this one just started feeling a little bit predictable. It had something in it which I don't want to say explicitly in case you want to check it out. But one of the women meets a character at a pub, and it's very clear to the reader that this character is someone she shouldn't trust. And I couldn't work out if we were supposed to realise that as a reader and the tension was in the woman not realizing it and you thinking, please get away from this person because this is a bad idea. But I'm not sure that that's the case. I feel like maybe she hasn't credited the reader with enough sense to recognize the not very subtle thing that is going on. And that seems to be where the plot gravitates towards and where the crescendo is. And if I recognize that right from the beginning, then that's not really worth the page count, is it? So I'm gonna part ways with this one, but I would still recommend A Helping Hand, which is the book of hers, as I said, that I read last year, and it was one of my favorite books of the year. Next up, I'm gonna head to Astral Season, Beastly Season by Tahi Saihate. So I will crack on with that one and I'll report back whenever I've finished reading it. Hi, it's a couple of days later again. It is Tuesday and it is still raining, and I have been reading a lot of things since I last checked. That was a cross between checked in and chatted, I think. I've been reading loads of things since I last talked with you. So I have read Astral Season, Beastly Season, but I've also been reading these 3 books, which I look forward to chatting with you about in my end of month wrap up, because tonight is the launch for my book Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit, and also books by Courtney Conrad and Nicole Seal. Every month Blood Axe, who's my poetry publisher, do a launch event where all of the authors they're publishing that month do a reading and have a conversation online. So that is tonight, and we've been reading each other's books in anticipation of that, because we're going to do solo readings, but then we will discuss and ask each other questions. And I loved all 3 of these books, and I can't wait to hear them read from them. So I've read I Am Evidence by Courtney Conrad, and then Nicole Sealey's 2 books that have just been published with Blood Axe. I think they've been out in the States a bit longer. This is Ordinary Beast, and this is The Ferguson Report and Erasure. And I need to figure out how I'm going to do this event tonight, because I've just remembered it's going to be dark. I'm so used to the evenings being quite light, but this event is 7:15 until probably 8:45. It's definitely going to be dark. So I'm going to have to move some lamps around on the dining room table and set up there, I think, because I want to be really close to the router, because I don't want any internet problems. You didn't need to know all that. I'm just thinking out loud. But yeah, by the time you see this video, that event will have happened, and you'll be able to catch up with it and watch it on YouTube. So I'll link it in the description box down below, and I might include a clip in the next section as well. So that will have happened, and then on Thursday, that's the official release date of my book Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit. I have read some sample poems before on this channel, but if you would like to hear more, you can head over to that launch event. But I was also asked this week by Blood Axe, I have my computer here, to write an introduction for the book, which was published over at Bookanista along with a couple of sample poems, and I'll link that article down below. But I thought maybe it might be helpful for me to read that very brief introduction here. It's only, I think, 300 words, in case you want to know what the book is about, and then you can go read the sample poems and decide whether or not you would like to check it out. So this was the introduction that I wrote. When I started writing the poems in Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit, it had been 4 years since our first IVF appointment. I wrote the collection over the following 2 years, not knowing what the end would be. I'd aimed to finish the book by winter 2022, realising I might be pregnant by then, I might not be. Wherever my body found itself, the book would meet me there. It was a strange but also vital time to be writing. When you start to think about parenthood, you inevitably think of your own childhood. I spent much of mine in hospital, born with a rare and complicated condition that required dozens of surgeries, the first of which was when I was just 3 months old. Doctors crafted hands for me, knitted skin grafts, gave me tear ducts, monitored the linings of my organs. I've long known that people have opinions about disabled bodies. I'd also heard and have now witnessed firsthand that people have lots of opinions about would-be pregnant bodies too. And when those things collide, it's interesting. I'm used to being the medical specimen, the person that doctors line up to peer at. I'm indebted to many brilliant doctors, and I've also encountered those who actively dislike disabled patients, can't cure them, unnecessarily complicated, etc. From the wonderful embryologist who told me after a very difficult month that if I were her daughter, she would be proud of me, to the consultant who, when we were discussing why my embryos kept dying, snapped, "Don't use the word dying, Jennifer. It attributes unnecessary emotion to the situation." In the days of the Victorian freak show, people with my condition were labelled lobster children. In the past few years, it's felt as though I've been observing my body from the outside too, either by disassociation or simply the surreal nature of IVF treatment, especially on a body that twists and turns. Please do not touch this exhibit. It's an exploration of disability, IVF and folklore, the stories we tell ourselves about our bodies, and the stories that get told about us, the many narratives that have a tendency to slip out of our control. So yeah, I will leave links to the collection in the description box down below if you would like to go and take a look. I think my voice sounds slightly croaky because I've been practicing reading for tonight. So after I film this clip, I'm going to give my voice a rest so that I can actually speak this evening. But briefly, I read Astral Season, Beastly Season by Tahi, which is translated from the Japanese by Kalu Almoni. And I didn't love this. It's one of those books that leaves you feeling quite frustrated, or it left me feeling quite frustrated because I think the premise is so good and then I just didn't think the execution was right there. It is about two boys who go to the same school. They don't really know each other apart from having seen each other at gigs for this J-pop idol that they are really, really into. And then on the news, she is arrested for murdering someone. And they hear the name of the person, and at first they don't know who that person is. They think maybe it's a child, but it turns out, as you know from the blurb, that it was her boyfriend. And they decide to connect, to come up with a plan to try and rescue her from prison. One of the two decides that he would like to try and take the fall, but his plan for taking the fall means that he has to commit crimes while she's in prison so that it's obvious to the police that she is not the one committing those crimes. It's split into two sections, so we follow these two, and then in the future we follow a different character who's looking back on that time. Something I did like stylistically about this book is that the main character, Yamashiro, uses speech marks when everyone else is speaking, but doesn't use speech marks when he is speaking. So it's almost like he's not recording his direct speech. I mean, he is, but he isn't making it official, almost like he doesn't want to be on record saying the things that he is saying. I thought that was fun. I did think that sometimes the second person, which is used quite a lot in this book, slipped, and I wasn't sure if that was the original writing or if it happened to be the translation. I found it difficult to follow in some parts, and I think that's because it's so dialogue heavy, and I think ultimately it was because it was mostly dialogue that I felt quite a large disconnect with this book. I wanted more world building. I wanted more about the internal lives of Yamashiro and these characters, but we were just getting them discussing their plans and what they were going to do, and I didn't find that particularly interesting. I unfortunately didn't feel like the ending was particularly satisfying either, so overall a bit of a flop for me. Yes, it went to some dark places, but I'm not going to reward a book for shock factor if I'm not enjoying everything else about it. So I'm sad about that, but I'm hoping that other people will love it and I'll find a good home for it. And I have read lots of other books about parasocial relationships this year that I have preferred. And if you haven't seen my best books of 2023 video, my best books of 2023 so far video, I will link that in the description box down below, and you can go and find others that I would want to shout about more. I'm going to go to Ice by Anna Kavan next, and I'm going to read you the very beginning of it before I end this clip because it is so atmospheric and magical, and I don't know what I was expecting actually, but I was surprised when I started reading it, and I'm loving it so far. I've also decided that I'm going to listen to The Harpy by Megan Hunter. This audiobook is only 3 hours long, so I'm going to listen to this one over the course of the next few days. But yeah, I'm going to read you the beginning of Ice, which is about a man who is following a woman who he used to know as the world around them is changing into a world of ice. I was lost. It was already dusk. I had been driving for hours and was practically out of petrol. The idea of being stranded on these lonely hills in the dark appalled me, so I was glad to see a signpost and coast down to a garage. When I opened a window to speak to the attendant, the air outside was so cold I turned up my collar. While he was filling the tank, he commented on the weather. Never known it so cold in this month. Forecast says we're in for a real bad freeze-up. Most of my life was spent abroad, soldiering or exploring remote areas, but though I had just come back from the tropics and freeze-ups meant little to me, I was struck by the ominous sound of his words. Anxious to get on, I asked the way to the village I was making for. Oh, you'll never find it in the dark. It's right off the beaten track, and those hill roads are dangerous when they're iced up. He seemed to imply that only a fool would drive on under present conditions, which rather annoyed me. So, cutting short his involved directions, I paid him and drove away, ignoring his last warning shout, "Look out for that ice." I don't know, I just really feel this one. I hope that it lives up to my expectations. I'm excited. So yeah, I'll read that, I'll listen to the Harpy, and then I'll come back and talk to you. For now, I'm going to rest my voice, get ready for the event tonight, and I'll insert a clip of that here and I'll link it in the description box down below. Hi, it is Sunday morning and I know I'm looking so glamorous right now. I was gonna get dressed and put on a wig and makeup, and then I just thought I'm literally doing that for this video, and that is very silly. So I think you can cope with me in my dressing gown for a minute. And autumn is definitely here. I'm in flannel pajamas, which I'm so excited about. I switched over my clothes yesterday, as in put away all the really summery dresses and got out thick jumpers. I don't have entirely separate wardrobes for spring, summer, autumn, winter, obviously, but there are a few things I switched around. It's just very pleasing, very pleasing. But yeah, I had my flu vaccine yesterday afternoon and it has got me this time. I am wiped. I'm gonna go have a nap after I film this clip, but I wanted to film this because it's Sunday. This video is going up today and I need to wrap it up and talk to you about the last two books. So last time we spoke, I was reading Ice by Anna Kavan, which is a classic. As I said, it's from the 1960s. And I have very mixed feelings about this one because I love the language in it so much and the world building. I can't really explain, I'm gonna put this down, I will insert the cover here as I talk. The feeling that I get when I read a book like this, I can only compare it to other feelings I have. It gives me the same feelings I get when I reread Alice in Wonderland or when I watch Return to Oz, which is that film that terrified us all as a child, but also we were weirdly fascinated by. There was also a version of Jack and the Beanstalk that I watched as a kid that completely mesmerized me. And I tried to find it for ages and found it last year, and it's a Japanese version of Jack and the Beanstalk from the 70s. And it has a Spirited Away feel to it. So I think there's something very childlike, captivating, this real innocent imagination, I want to say. I don't know, I just absolutely adored all of the descriptions of the snow-covered landscape. It's very hypnotic, but that is paired with the storyline, which is a man who is going on a quest to try and find this woman, but he keeps on calling her a girl and describes her like a child, and he sees her in the snow every so often, completely naked with silver hair, and he wants to get to her, and he says that he loves her, but he also fantasizes about abusing her and murdering her. But none of this seems to be quite real. He'll be having an interaction with someone and having a conversation, then suddenly she'll be there and we slip into what feels like a dreamlike state. This creates a feeling of being in a snowstorm and you walking through the snow and thinking you can see everything clearly, and then every so often just the snow completely whirling around you and you feel very disorientated. And that has a magical feeling too, but it's very male gaze heavy. And I found that very jarring along with the world building. I feel like we're supposed to feel that as a reader, but it definitely lessened my enjoyment of the book overall. It was very uncomfortable to be in his head all of the time. I would recommend a different book instead of this one that I personally preferred, which is a Hiromi Kawakami book called Record of a Night Too Brief. It's a collection of novellas. I can't remember if it's 2 or 3, but the first one is about a woman who is trying to relocate her porcelain girlfriend, and every time she finds her, she seems to break, or she worries she's going to be destroyed by the world, so she swallows her. It has that magical feeling without the male gaze element. So if you're looking for something that feels very stylistically like how I have described Ice, I would go for the Hiromi Kawakami. And then personally, I read The Harpy by Megan Hunter, and I listened to this one on audio. I think I said in the last clip that the audiobook is only 3 hours long, and I don't know where I got that from. It is very short, it's 4.5 hours, but it is not 3 hours. And this book, I feel, is extremely well crafted. I wasn't sure about the ending and the payoff of the ending, but it mirrors the form of other books that I've read on this subject, such as My Husband by Maud Ventura and Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, especially Night Bitch because this is about a transformation. It's a woman who has found out her husband is having an affair, and she decides that she's going to punish him at various points, and she can feel her body transforming into that of a harpy, which is a creature that she's always been fascinated by. And it's about anger, repressed anger due to patriarchy building up in a woman's body. I actually think this is more effective than Night Bitch, and overall I think I did prefer it to My Husband by Maud Ventura. The raw emotion was really there for me, and I liked the way that all of that was conveyed, and I thought that there was a good amount of humour in there too. The way she feels like when she discovers her husband is having this affair, almost like she's regressing to be like her children, and she's feeling like she can't contain these very strong emotions, doesn't know how to deal with them, and feels as though she wants to throw herself down on the floor like a child would and express herself in a very primal way. I really did enjoy this book. I think it's excellent in many ways, and I would heartily recommend it. I think I would just obviously say that if you have read other books like this that I've just mentioned, along with things like The Vegetarian, then you may feel as though you have gone over a lot of this ground in other texts, definitely in different guises, and all of them are saying different things. But I'm always interested when reading books on very similar themes, how that impacts your enjoyment of one specific text, because inevitably it is going to. So that's how I feel about the final 2 books that I've read in this video. No new favourites this week, but that is absolutely fine. I have read some very intriguing things. I would love to know if you have read any of the 5 books that I spoke about in this video, or if you would like to pick them up now that I have spoken about them. If you are new to my channel and you enjoyed this video and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. If you enjoy my content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that'd be very kind. Link to that is in the description box down below. Support over on Patreon allows me to keep creating free content for you all, and also funds my time making these videos accessible by creating captions and all of that good stuff. Thanks again to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. I will leave their details in the description box down below. I will be back for another video next Sunday. I hope that you're all doing as well as you can be doing, and I am sending lots of love. I'm gonna go have a nap now, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.